As President Cyril Ramaphosa lands in Russia for the 16th BRICS summit, the atmosphere is charged with bold ambition to challenge the long-standing dominance of the US dollar in global trade. At least 20 leaders from around the world, including BRICS countries, are in Kazan, Russia, in a show of force by the Global South, aiming to reshape the world's economic landscape. Top of the agenda, a daring push for local currencies in trade agreements, paving the way for a more balanced financial world. This meeting in Russia could mark a seminal moment in how nations interact financially, a new era of trade that could redefine global economics and politics. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the world will be watching closely. The president's spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, spokesperson for the presidency, had agreed to speak to us. His phone was ringing a little while ago. Now it's on voicemail. But alongside him, we invited Stavros Nicolaou, who is the Aspen Pharmacare Group's senior executive, but also a member of the South African BRICS Business Council, who joins us to explain what is at play here. So, Stavros, we appreciate that you picked up the phone when we called. Thank you for your time. And as always, welcome to 702 Breakfast.
Good morning, Bongani, and good morning to the listeners, and thanks very much for having me again.
So let's just talk broadly. There's a lot of speculation that this could be a game-changing moment as the Global South, particularly through the BRICS countries, walk away or at least aim for a de-dollarization of the world's financial system. Is that something that is as feasible as it sounds?
Bongani, I'm going to speak to you as a BRICS Business Council member this morning, which represents the South African business constituency. We're a council that gets nominated by organised business and then gets appointed thereafter. So our posture and stance as a business community is, firstly, that we don't see the BRICS countries or BRICS economies replacing the West. And this is not a trade-off between the East and the West. I need to make clear that our posture is that South African business follows what is in the best economic interest of the country, what is in the best economic interest of business and investment. And to that end, there's opportunities in the East, in the West, and in the South. The South is becoming increasingly important for us. Now, let me respond directly to your question around de-dollarization, and I'm going to be highly pragmatic in my response. I think the conversation that is going on at the moment is one of settling local transactions in local currencies. So the process right now would be if you were exporting something to India, for example, you'd have to convert from rands to dollars. Then you'd have to convert back from dollars to Indian rupees on the other side. So the intention here now is to have settling of transactions in domestic currency. Of course, the way I described it earlier, there's costs involved when you move from rands to dollars and then from dollars back down to rupees. So to the extent that this provides greater efficiency, it's a less costly way of doing business, then I think you will find South African business to be supportive of it. De-dollarization is a concept at the moment. I'm not sure that it's practical, to be frank with you, and I think we'll have to watch the conversations a lot more closely. But I think in all of these conversations, as business people, we look at what is practical rather than ideological.
What role would you as business want South Africa to play in reshaping the dialogue around trade and governance as part of these emerging economies at the summit?
I think our posture has to be one of following where the best economic interest of our country lies. And as I stated earlier, there's opportunities in the East, the West, and the South. We cannot ignore any of those regions for all the obvious reasons. If the West is currently our biggest trading partners, the East, you've got strong emerging economies, and some are not so emerging anymore, some are developed economies. So you cannot ignore the economic opportunities there. And then, of course, when I speak about the South, I'm largely referring to our own continent, the African continental free trade area. So I think our government's posture has to be one of acting in the best economic interest. It's very often a delicate balancing act, but I suspect that if we act in our best economic interest at all times, that's got to be the guiding light here. It's got to be the lone star that we adopt as a country, because at the end of the day, we cannot continue with the pedestrian 1.5% growth. I think the whole country acknowledges that we've got to get our growth levels back onto a trajectory that is 3% and above. And these economic partnerships, which is partly what BRICS aims to achieve, are important in us getting to the desired economic growth levels in our country.
If I'm reading between the lines, essentially you're saying we can make friends without making enemies. Stavros Nicolau, I appreciate your time, member of the South African BRICS Business Council.
Thanks very much.
The Big Interview
with Bongani Bingwa.
All right, we've got the presidency spokesperson on the line, Vincent Magwenya. Welcome to 702 Breakfast. I was just speaking now to Stavros Nicolau about this particular summit being potentially a seminal one, as part of the discussions, no doubt, are going to be about how members of the BRICS grouping, or even those in the global south, can do trade with each other in their domestic currencies. Is this going to be a big game changer?
Well, it is an important issue amongst many other issues, Bongani, that have been discussed here. But where we are is that there is still a process that still need to engage on before we get to a point where we're able to finalize that utilization of local currencies when trading amongst ourselves as BRICS members.
Essentially, one of the issues, I would imagine, is because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, it's allowed the US at times to act unilaterally in deciding who can trade with whom. If they don't like the country, as we've seen in the case of Russia, for whatever reason, they can simply freeze you out and lock you out of the financial system. And so suggestions have been that this might be the beginning of the end of the Bretton Woods institutions. Is that a view we share?
Well, I think that is a bit of a mischaracterization of the purpose of BRICS and the kind of deliberations that are taking place within the BRICS group of countries. It's not an anti-US or anti a particular block of countries, but it's a grouping of countries that share common economic, trade, and political interest within our global sort of multilateral order, and it's a grouping of countries that seek to enhance their trade and political ties. And so notwithstanding the issues that individual members have with the West and with the US, it is not a grouping that is obsessed with how it interacts with the US. In our case, for example, we have a very strategic relationship with the US, which is well known and acknowledged and important to us. And so where countries within BRICS are seeking other alternative trade instruments or enabling instruments, that is discussed and looked at within the context of enhancing those trade and economic ties amongst member countries, but not as a stance against a particular country or bloc of countries.
Ahead of the summit addressing the BRICS Business Forum, the president said a number of things, including, of course, a call for fellow BRICS countries to partner with us to build roads, ports for imports and exports, rail, energy, telecoms, networks, etc., essentially asking for BRICS countries to get involved in helping Africa to industrialize. What conversations are happening behind the scenes that could make that a reality?
Well, you will know that we're in China recently, and part of our engagement with the Chinese involved exactly the issues that you have referenced in this regard. And so we are looking at the same way with respect to how we engage.
All right, we seem to have lost Vincent Magwenya there. He is in Kazan, by the way, in Russia at the summit. So obviously, as you might imagine, connection issues there could be a bit tricky. We'll watch developments that unfold from this 16th summit. And essentially, I'm hearing caution is the word from both our guests this morning. Don't read too much into the deliberations. It won't be pivotal. It won't be seminal, as people like Bongani Bingwa might want to suggest. But what do they say? Read between the lines.
Current events, developing stories,
Tough questions.
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.